Welcome to the HAIMS Superuser video tutorial. I ask that you please turn your cell phone to vibrate or quiet mode. Of course, I welcome any and all questions as we go through the HAIMS bulk scanning medical records portion as well as the HAIMS clinical portion of this training. Please feel free to interrupt me at any moment if you feel that there's a question that you have, or if I've said something that maybe did not make sense to you. Please interrupt me and ask questions. I will be working from our training database, which is a fake system. It does mirror the standalone and the Alta application of HAIMS. However, any of the data that you will see, the names or the social security numbers, for example, all of that information is completely false and fictitious. There's an interim guidance for the clinical and service treatment record, the STR for HAIMS. And basically what this is saying is that through the HAIMS application, we now will have the ability to print the service treatment record, scan it as a digital document into the HAIMS application. No longer will it be required to print and mail these service treatment records to different facilities. And that started in January of 2014. This slide talks about the mandatory fields that are required when you do upload the service treatment record into the HAIMS application. There are 4 required fields. We call these metadata fields. The first is the patient's name. Then you'll need the author's name, the author of the actual document that you are going to upload into HAIMS, the document type, and the date the document was created or the date of the visit. There are some recommended fields that are business process enforced, such as the practice setting, the specialty, maybe the clinic or the installation. Those are not required fields. However, it is recommended that when we upload documents into the HAIMS application, we fill out as many of the 18 different metadata fields there are. Again, for the service treatment record, there are the 4 required fields, and then under document type, you do have the ability to choose, just like you do currently today in Alta, the STR for Alta, the medical records part 1 through 4, as well as the dental 1 through 4. Those remain the same. There are a few records processing centers that are currently up and running today. For example, the Army and the Air Force, they are sending their service treatment records to San Antonio, Texas, where they are bulk scanning multiple documents into the HAIMS application all at one time. For the Navy, they have an operations center out in Chantilly, Virginia. And you'll notice here at the bottom of the screen, there are some POC or points of contact for the Army and the Air Force and the Navy. The interim guidance in reference to the clear and legible reports for those folks, for example, that work in referral management. When they receive off-site documentation, currently today, the process has been to copy and paste that information into the Alta clinical note or ad note. Well, they will no longer do that. You will receive from your command the direction of when you will completely stop cutting and pasting into Alta, and instead you will simply upload those documents as a digital format into the HAIMS application. So the purpose of HAIMS is to conduct training to support the accelerated deployment of HAIMS. For those of you that were around when Alta was deployed, that took over 3 years to deploy worldwide. HAIMS will be deployed in the matter of about 15 months, so it's an accelerated deployment. You'll notice that second bullet point talks about a paperless record. We all know that we will never be completely paperless. However, our goal, the military's goal, is to take a lot of the loose documents that are there and start scanning those into the HAIMS application. It will support the workflow for the VA, the Veteran Benefits Determination. Theater images are available. Full deployment should occur by June of 2014, and image sharing capability has already started. The scope of HAIMS: to enhance global awareness for the healthcare providers. And when we mention the word providers here, we are really referencing anyone that deals with patient care. It could be a tech, could be administrative personnel, could be the provider. HAIMS will provide the ability to scan and import these artifacts and images into the HAIMS application, and that's what we will go over today. Our class will focus upon two applications of HAIMS. The first will be to bulk scan medical records information into the HAIMS application, so scanning multiple documents all at one time, and we will finish our class under the clinical role of HAIMS. The HAIMS Overview: what does HAIMS stand for? Health Artifact and Image Management Solution. When you hear me talk about the word artifact or image or assets, I am referencing the documents, the digital documents that are being uploaded into the HAIMS repository. Think of HAIMS as a large repository or a large filing cabinet where you have the ability to take copious amounts of paper, turn it into a digital file, and then import it or upload it into the HAIMS repository. You'll notice here the first bullet point talks about radiographic images, X-rays, CTs, MRIs. Those types of images are automatically being loaded into the HAIMS application. Once the radiologist generates the report through CHCS, within a short time frame, those images become available to anyone who has the HAIMS access through their clinical role. Everything else that you see on this slide, the clinical photographs, EKGs, any WAV file or audio file, even video files can be imported into the HAIMS repository. And of course, all scanned documents are going to be uploaded into HAIMS. It was created to manage the health artifacts for the military health system. There are two different methods to access the HAIMS application. The first is through the standalone mode, or a simple web URL. In our class today, we will focus upon med records, and we will access the medical records portion of HAIMS through the standalone mode. The second method, the most predominant method, is going to be from within Alta. When you are in Alta, once your account has been created, you will notice that there will be a folder, and the folder will be labeled HAIMS. And you will see that when we are in Alta towards the end of the class. HAIMS will interface with several types of external systems. Of course, it interfaces with Alta, the Bidirectional Health Information Exchange. Through that, BHE, we now have the ability to search for images and assets that are in the Veterans Administration's VISTA system. So we can now see their information, and they in turn will be able to see the HAIMS information that we will have loaded in our system. PACS, the Picture Archiving and Communication System, I mentioned earlier, it does not matter where a radiograph is generated. As soon as that report is completed, that image is loaded automatically into the HAIMS repository. Some of the key benefits of HAIMS: again, large repository to store all the scanned and imported documents. It will provide access to PACS, those X-rays, no matter where they were taken. And we now have the ability to see the VA's information, as well as they have the ability to see our HAIMS documents. So with this breakthrough approach, we will improve the health delivery for our wounded warriors. It is seamless access because we now have instant access to documents that are imported into HAIMS. If a document is imported in the HAIMS over in Germany, for example, I could see that. If I were, for example, Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas, I could see that instantly. So with HAIMS, the continuity of care means that the right information is available at the right time. And that really could mean saving a life. There are a few known functionality issues. The first talks about the DICOM images, or those radiographs. The larger the file that you are trying to view, the more slices or more X-rays that you're trying to look at, the longer it may take for those to load on your workstation. That is not a HAIMS restriction. That restriction is completely directed towards your pipeline or the type of internet speed you have at your facility. And you notice it says account synchronization. Creating a HAIMS account may lock you out of Alta. The only time that usually happens if you do not know your HAIMS username and password. You will talk with your system administrator to create your HAIMS account, and what they're going to make sure you know is what is your username and password for Alta. As long as you know those two things, you should be fine. So our course objectives today, we're going to introduce you to HAIMS. We're going to navigate and utilize the standalone mode. We will spend most of our class time in this video in the standalone mode. We will create and print a ticket. We will demonstrate bulk scanning, how to edit and validate those batches. When we bulk scan into HAIMS, once we scan those documents in there, they will go into the validation queue. Think of the validation queue as just a little waiting terminal where we will go in, validate the information, make sure that it's accurate, that the patient's demographics are accurate, that the document type is accurate, and of course make sure we have the right patient prior to importing it into the HAIMS application. We will search for patients in the standalone mode. We will navigate and utilize the embedded mode through Alta. Again, we will show you how to search for assets, view and acquire assets, and how to associate assets or paperclip those assets to encounters. Auditing patients' records and preparing reports for the HIPAA auditor. We will briefly touch upon the HIPAA auditor's tabs, and then as well as the researcher. When I log into the HAIMS standalone mode, I'm going to log in as a system administrator to demonstrate the various tabs that you will see on the HAIMS dashboard screen. As far as the researcher's role, they will not have access to patient searches. They only have the ability to search for specific documents and images that are relevant to that patient. So in summary, we will log into HAIMS, navigate through the application. We're going to focus on medical records or bulk scanning in the beginning of this video, and we will finish as a clinical user. The HIPAA auditor, that person at your facility will have the ability to run a report. They can run a report based upon the patient, or they can run a report based upon the actual user. So the user who accesses the patient's records, the HIPAA auditor has the ability to see basically every keystroke that is performed. So that's it for our slide presentation. Are there any questions on any of that? Great. This slide talks about some of the resources that are available to you. You'll notice that they're Mr. Ronald Anderson and Mr. Lois Klim. Those are the government contacts, as well as down below you'll see some of the Leidos contacts. As far as your service representative, they are listed here on this slide. You'll notice under the HAIMS resources it says KSS or Knowledge Sharing Site. You have the ability, if you choose, to go to that knowledge sharing site, create your own account. From there, you have the ability to ask questions about HAIMS, and someone like myself would reply to your questions via email. Under the MHS Learn site, you have the ability to access the HAIMS computer-based training modules, and you can watch short video clips. For example, how to import an asset into the HAIMS application. You could go to the MHS Learn site to learn that. So now what I'm going to do is log in to the standalone mode so that we can talk a little bit about the HAIMS dashboard and then jump right into the medical records bulk scanning. You may or may not see an icon on your desktop that looks like the HAIMS icon I have. It's a simple web address. Your system administrator will know the website for you at your facility. Once your account has been created, you will simply log in by clicking on log in using your CAC card right here. You click here one time, you choose your email certificate, and then it may or may not prompt you to enter your CAC PIN, and that will automatically log you in. Down below, you'll notice it says change password. In the standalone mode, as far as bulk scanning. Now this is specific to bulk scanning only. If you work, for example, in the medical records department or the PAD office, and you are given 2 separate accounts, one for your clinical role and then one for your bulk scanning, you will need to change your bulk scan username, your bulk scan password prior to day 60. So every 59 days, if you utilize bulk scanning, you will need to come here and change your password. And you simply do it by clicking on the change password. For myself, I am going to log in as a system administrator. Again, our class for this video is going to be broken up into 2 sections, 2 main sections. As a super user, you may be called upon in the future to sit down with a new recruit or maybe someone who PCSs into your facility. They may not have a HAIMS account. It would be your responsibility to sit down as a super user and teach them what you're seeing here in this video today. First, how do we bulk scan documents into the medical records bulk scanning portion of HAIMS? And then secondly, as a clinical user, how do we navigate through the HAIMS application? Our focus today, we will begin with bulk scanning. What you see here on this screen is what we call the HAIMS standalone dashboard screen. My role is over here on the right side. It says your assigned roles are HAIMS System Administrator. Depending upon what your role is at your facility, you may be given more than one role. If it were the System Administrator role, you would see all these tabs up at the top of the screen here on the left. Next to that, you see most recently viewed patients. Again, depending upon your role, you may or may not see most recently viewed patients. If you are a clinical user, you will see this, and it will store the last 20 patients that you have accessed from within Alta or the standalone HAIMS. In my example, I only have 1 patient. Let's start at the top of the screen. Of course, you have your dashboard tab. Your second tab is the patient search tab, which we will go into the patient search tab towards the end of the medical records portion of this training. I'm going to click on the reports tab. From here, the HIPAA auditor has the ability, as I mentioned, to run a report by either the patient or by the user. And they can run specific reports. They may want to see who created an asset or who has associated an asset to a specific encounter. They may want to see who has been accessing sensitive break-to-glass information. They can run all those reports from this tab right here. I'm going to skip the bulk scan tab. The System Administrators tab, of course, from here, the System Administrator has the ability to determine how long before your session will time out with inactivity. The default is set at 14 minutes. And down here, you'll see how large of a file you can upload into the HAIMS application. And then down below are just SnareWorks domains. Everyone will get the logout tab. When you log out of standalone, this is the preferred method to click on the logout tab, which we will do at the end of the training. Under the help tab, from here you'll notice there are frequently asked questions. There are even some HAIMS tutorials that you can view. You'll notice the computer-based trainings I mentioned are here as well. Those are 5 to 7 minute videos. And down at the bottom you'll notice it says About HAIMS. If you click on that link, it will tell you the version of HAIMS, as well as you'll see it says Release Notes. Any upgrade that has been performed to the HAIMS application, if you wanted to see what was new, you could come here in the standalone mode, click on About HAIMS, and then click on the Release Notes, and you can read a PDF on any of the recent changes to HAIMS. Under the My Settings tab, from here, you have a couple of different options. You'll notice at the top it says that I can put in my contact information, my address. Over on the left side, I could even add my own photo if I choose. And in the middle of the screen, it says Search Preferences. Search by last in, or last number of most recent assets. When you do a search in HAIMS, the system will automatically reply with the most 100 recent assets that were loaded into the system. You can tell the system that I may only want to see the last 10 or the last 25. The lower the number that you choose, obviously the quicker that the screen is going to load. Down below it says Save Queries. When we save queries from within the Alta embedded mode, such as a search query, which I will demonstrate later, or a grid configuration, this is where I would delete them. I would come into the standalone, click on my settings tab, come down here, and I could simply delete my queries or save grid configurations. Below that, you'll notice it says Quick Search. Similar to Alta, we have the first letter of the last name as well as the last four of the social. You can even put in the FMP numbers as well. The Quick Search here works just like the Quick Search in Alta. Again, I will touch upon the Patient Search tab after we have gone through the medical records bulk scanning. Any questions on any of the dashboard information so far? Okay, great. So, as I mentioned, as a super user, you are going to learn how to navigate as a clinical user as well as how to bulk scan multiple documents into the system at one time. That is how we are going to focus our class right now. In order to access the HAIMS bulk scanning system, you will hover over bulk scan with your mouse and then click on network. Since I am in our training database, it automatically logs me in. For those of you watching this video, if you have been given either a ticket creator's role or a validator's role or a medical records administrator's role, you would be prompted, in order to access bulk scanning, you need to put in a specific username and password. And that username would be in the format of the word HAIMS, H-A-I-M-S, \, and then you put in your username and password. Again, for me, I'm logging into my training database and it automatically logs me in. So what do we see when we log in first time as a medical records bulk scanner? We are going to be taken to what we call the Create Ticket screen. Now the ticket is really nothing more than a fax cover sheet that you are filling out patient metadata information, and you print it and you put it on top of the documents that you are going to bulk scan all at one time. So as I repeatedly say the word ticket, I am specifically talking about a single piece of paper that you're going to print, lay on top of all of the documents that you're about to scan in, and that ticket or that fax cover sheet has all of the pertinent metadata information that is required so the system knows which patient, what document type, dates of the visit, one of those 18 fields that I mentioned from the slide presentation. It automatically will take you to this tab that says My Tickets. You'll notice down below I actually have 2 tickets in my queue. If I click on the All Tickets tab right next to it, this will show me all of the tickets or fax cover pages that have been created from my regional HAIR. And the regional HAIR is the HAIMS Artifact and Image Repository. So your site may share with a different site in your region. And I can see here all of the different tickets. You'll notice down at the bottom right of my screen, it says view 1 of 40 of 58, which tells me there are a total of 58 different tickets in my regional HAIR. I am going to go ahead and click back on my tickets again. And we'll talk a little bit about the screen. Obviously, if I wanted to simply print one of these tickets, I could check mark this box, and then I could click on Print Ticket. Next to that, I have the ability to delete a ticket. Show search bar. If I click on the show search bar, it will allow me to narrow my search. For example, if I knew that the ticket label was HAIMS XXX 25, I could simply type in 25 and it would narrow it down to just one. Very fast. It's a very easy search filter. If I backspace that out and hit enter, it will reload my grid. So I'm going to hide my search bar. I can also click on the Find Ticket. This is a Boolean search. From here, I can search by ticket ID, label name, creation date. I can then choose contains or equal to and type in my own parameters and click Find. You'll notice the Save as New view. We have in my screen from My Tickets tab 5 different columns. Down at the bottom left of my screen, I have a button that I can click on that says Columns. From here, I have the ability to customize my view. This is customization for you, the user. If I want to see the ticket creator's name on my screen, I simply click the plus. I could even grab the ticket creator's name, drag it to the top so it would be the first column, and then click OK. You'll notice that my columns have now changed. I've added one. And if this is a view that I want to have every time I log in, I could save it by clicking on Save as New View, give it a name, I'll call it Test, hit Submit, and you'll notice that it puts this view at the top as a third tab. If I no longer needed to have this tab in my view, I could simply remove it by clicking on the X, and it will ask me, are you sure? I say yes, I want to delete. So again, a lot of different customization from within the HAIMS application, not only in the bulk scanning, the portion that we're going over right now, but also in the clinical embedded, Alta embedded. You can also do customizations, which you will see at the end of class. So how do we create a ticket? Over on the right side, you'll notice I have some metadata information. I want to start with a blank screen, so I can click on New Blank. From here, the system will automatically give me a ticket expiration date. That date is 7 days from today. Tickets will auto expire 7 days from today unless I change that date. So if I create a ticket with the expiration date of 21 April, on the 21st, that ticket will automatically delete itself from my Tickets tab and the All Tickets queue. Down below that, we have the patient box. We simply click once inside the patient's box and we get the patient search screen. From here, I can search for a patient, so I will search for HAIMS XXX and first name 50. I also have the ability in many of the different screens from within HAIMS to widen my columns, as you see me doing right now. So I typed in HAIMS XXX50. You'll notice there are a lot of different HAIMS XXX50s. I can utilize this filter box as I did in the tickets filter and simply type in FIFTY. And I need to put in the first name. There we go. So I will choose 50. If you hover over the patient's name, you will get a pop-up box We call it a smart pop-up. From here, I can do a quick review to make sure that I did grab the correct patient. If I had incorrectly grabbed the patient, I could click the red X, click back inside the patient's box, and start over. Now, when you create a ticket, you only need one label to create a ticket. You either need the patient's name, the document type, or your own label. So if I wanted to save this ticket, I could simply click Save Ticket. And you'll notice on the right side, I now have on the left side, I now have 3 tickets. I can also copy existing tickets. If I click on ticket number 1, you'll notice on the far right side, I have the patient's name, I have the author's name, the date, and I have a document title as well as a clinic. So you do have the ability to copy existing tickets. Say, for example, you work in the emergency room, and all you work with all day long are SF558 forms, standard form 558s. I could create a ticket for bulk scanning, type in the document type, type in the MHS form number, pick the clinic, pick the installation, save that ticket, and then I could come back and copy that ticket every time I had a new 558 to upload. I would not need to fill out those fields again because they're already filled in for me on the right side. So in this example, I could click Copy Existing. I could change the patient's name. Maybe we'll go with HAIMS MMM 50. So I can change the patient's name. The author of the document, in this case, the author is the provider John Jones or unknown. So we can backspace that out. And the doctor's name may be Smith. First name Steve. The date is the same. The document title, it's a standard form 508. That's the same, for example. As I scroll down, you'll notice that I also have the cardiology clinic in here. And if all of that information is the same, I can simply hit Save Ticket, or I can hit Save and Print. If I click Save and Print, obviously it's going to create a new ticket and bring up a window for me to print. If I cancel out, you can see here, this is the fax cover sheet or the ticket that was just created that you will then place on top of the documents that you are about to scan into the validation queue. You'll notice it has two different barcodes, one at the bottom, one at the top, and it assigns a Smart Ticket ID number. It tells me who created the ticket, when the ticket expires. All of the information that you see on the right side is inside this ticket. So now I have 4 tickets. Let's say, for example, we want to create a brand new ticket and we want to change the expiration date so that we can use this ticket over and over and over. We do not want it to expire and automatically delete itself from the My Tickets tab. You simply click on the calendar. I could put the ticket out a couple of years. Let's go to 2017, pick a day. And now when I create this ticket, it would remain in My Tickets tab as well as the All Tickets tab until 3 April of 2017. Again, why would we create a ticket with an expiration date of 3 years from today? Because many of the fields that I fill in are the same. So if you work in the internal med clinic and you give immunization shots, the doctor may be the same, the shot may be the same, maybe a flu shot. The clinic is internal medicine. If you're doing 15 or 20 shots a day, the date would be the same. You could create a ticket, fill in all of the metadata fields that don't change, save that ticket, and the next time you need to bulk scan immunization forms, you could come in, check mark the ticket that you want to copy, click Copy Existing, simply change the patient's name for each one and create your own tickets. Again, you do have the ability to delete tickets by simply checkmarking the tickets and clicking on delete. Any questions on the creating of tickets for bulk scanning? Great. Excuse me, we'll continue. So now that we have created our fax cover sheet, or the ticket that we are going to use to put on top of the stack of documents that we're about to scan in. I get this question frequently in class. Can I use one ticket and put it on top of 15 or 20 different pieces of paper for multiple patients? And the answer is yes. You do have the ability to print one ticket, put it on top of a stack of documents that might reference 15 or 20 different patients, and you can scan that into the validation queue. If you use the one ticket method, you must realize that when you do get to the validation queue, you will then need to split apart the documents that do not match up with the ticket. So for example, the immunization forms. We have 20 different patients. I could either create 20 tickets and scan in all of the documents at one time by putting a ticket on top of the first page, a ticket on top of the next for the next patient, another ticket on top of the next for the next patient, all the way down to 20. And I could scan all those in at one time, and then I would not need to split them apart in the validation queue because the ticket or the fax separator sheet will separate those forms for me. However, if I do not want to create 20 specific tickets, I could create just one. I could leave the patient name blank, for example, and I could print that one ticket, put it on top of all 20 of those documents, scan in all 20 at one time, and when I get to the validation queue, I would split them apart. And I would split them, and I would have 20 separate lines to work with, which we're going to demonstrate here shortly. So I spent a little bit more time on ticket creating because it can be a little confusing. I hope that I have been clear enough. I'll ask one more time. Any questions on the ticket creating before we move on? Okay, great. So once we create our ticket and we've printed the ticket or multiple tickets, the next process is to make sure that you prepare your documents. You need to prepare them prior to scanning. So if you are scanning in something that has been stapled, of course you're going to need to remove the staples. If something you're going to scan has sticky notes on it, you may need to either tape the sticky note down or photocopy it. Once you prepare all of your documents and get them in the order that you want to scan them in, then you put your ticket or tickets on top. You walk over to your multifunction device. You put your CAC in. Then you scan all of the documents at one time. Now, depending upon what type of multifunction device you have, you may be able to scan only 50 documents at a time, or maybe it's 100 at a time. It's all dependent upon the type of machine that you're using. Once you scan them in, all of those documents are going to go to what we call the HAIMS validation queue. They have not yet been uploaded into the HAIMS repository. They are sitting in what we call the validation queue. Now, depending upon your role, if you are only assigned the ticket creator's role, you are only going to see these two tabs at the top, My Tickets and All Tickets. You will not see the word right here next to Create Ticket that says Validation Queue. If, however, you have been assigned dual roles, maybe you were given the creator's role and the and the validator's role, then you will see create ticket and the validation queue. So we are going to imagine that we printed up a ticket or two, we scanned our documents in. Now we're going to come back to our workstation and we are going to click on validation queue. From here, you are going to see two tabs. You will see the My Batches tab, and then you will also see the All Batches tab. Again, My Batches are specific to anything that you scanned in yourself. All Batches would be all of the batches that have been scanned in to your regional HAIR repository. Now, depending upon the machine that you have, it may or may not be configured for you to see your batches in your My Batches tab. Some facilities have machines that can be configured so that every time you scan it in, it will automatically go under your My Batches tab, as well as put a copy in the All Batches tab. If you're at a facility that does not have that ability, you would then need to click on the All Batches tab to go find your batch. So we're going to click on All Batches. From here, you'll notice that we see 3 different batches. And we'll talk a little bit about this screen. Since I am logged in as the administrator, you do see where it says Delete Batches right here. And you also have a button over on the right that says Filter Only Rejected, Available, and No Filter. If your role is Validator Only, you will not see these 2 tabs, the Filter or the Delete. Only the Medical Records Administrator or the System Administrator has the ability to go into a queue, into the batch, in that queue, and delete those batches. Again, we have customization that we can perform on this screen. We have our view column, scan date and time, username, status, the MTF of the machine where it was scanned, the device name, the number of pages. This column is very important because when you prepare your documents prior to scanning, if, for example, I was scanning in a sleep study and this sleep study was 57 pages long, you would come to the validation queue, look at this column of under pages, and your hope is that you see the number 57. If for some reason you see a number that is less than that, chances are you are missing a page. If you are missing pages from your scan, you need to re-scan the entire document again. In the validation queue, you do not have the ability to scan a missing page and then combine it with a previous scan. So you would need to scan it, start over, and have your medical records administrator delete this batch. So number of pages is an important column to focus on. Down at the bottom, I have my columns tab button. I can click here and you'll notice there are 2 columns I could add. Or I could say I don't need to see the scanned username, and I could remove it by clicking on the minus. And I could click OK, which would then change my configuration. If I wanted to save this view, again, I click on Save as New View, which would put a new tab right next to the All Batches tab. If I wanted to filter, I could go on Show Search Bar. And I could filter down, for example, if I wanted to work with batch 1552. I could type in 1552, and the system will automatically, I have to put the whole number. Sorry about that. But if I put in the entire number, it would filter down. If I go under the Filter Only Available and I want to look at rejected batches, these are all of the batches that are in the rejection queue. Only the Medical Records Administrator is going to have access to this queue. So I'll give you an example. When you print up a ticket, if the printer that you printed from is running low on toner and the barcode is very light to read, It's not very dark. And you scan a batch into the validation queue. If it goes into the rejection queue, it may have gone in there simply because the ticket that you used was not dark enough. So you'll notice at the bottom right, it says that we have 271 batches in the rejection queue. And I could do a show search, for example, and I could go by name. I can put in T2, provider D, and it will filter down all of the batches that were modified or last looked at by T2 provider D. If I want to reload my screen, I simply backspace and I can hit enter, or I can use the reload icon down at the bottom. It looks like two arrows chasing each other. This is our reload grid. So I'm going to go back to filter only available. You'll notice in the middle, under scan date and time, you see a red ball with a white exclamation inside. That is to alert the validator that that batch has been in the queue for more than 7 days. Now, unlike the create ticket queue, where a ticket will automatically expire after 7 days, unless you change the date, nothing will automatically expire or delete from the validation queue. You will see that red ball just to let you know that that batch has been in the queue longer than 7 days. If I hover over that ball, you'll notice I'll get a pop-up, a hover to discover pop-up that says this batch has been in the queue for over 7 days. Next to the actual batches, you see the plus sign. If I would like to do a quick preview of that batch, I could click once on the plus. From there, it will load a preview of that batch. I can tell that in this batch, I have one line item, because I only see the one TV right here. The document type is an assessment. The author is John Holliday. I see the date. This would also tell me if the document is labeled as a sensitive document. And I can see that the status of this batch is that it's on hold. If I want to do a quick preview of the pages, I simply click once on the preview icon, and I could scroll through just to get a quick look at how many pages are inside and what they look like. When you are ready to go ahead and validate your batch, you simply click one time on the words validate batch. From here, this will open up the queue and you will see 3 panes. On the left pane is the document list. This is going to list out the document information for the scan that I scanned in. In this example here, since I have one line, that tells me that I only used one ticket. If I had used multiple tickets in this scan, let's say 10, I would see 10 lines, 1 through 10 over here on the left. In the middle, we have... Yes, question. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You ask your question first. What happened to the ticket? So when you scan with that ticket, what happens to the ticket? Does it become part of your document?
That's a great question. So the student asked, where did the ticket go when you scanned it in? HAIMS is smart enough to know that when you use a ticket on top of the documents that you're scanning in, it will not put that page in the validation queue. So basically, it will take the metadata information from that ticket and put it over here on the far right side of the screen, but the actual page itself, the physical piece of paper, you will not see that image inside the queue. Good question. Was there another question?
I had a question about some of the terms that you're using. I'm hearing documents and I'm hearing
batches, and I'm hearing pages. What's the difference between all those?
Good question. So the student wants to know what's the difference between documents, pages, and what was the last one?
And batches.
And batches. Documents, pages, and batches. Okay. A batch is the accumulation of the scan that you scanned in. So when you take tickets and you scan them in at the multifunction device, that one scan is considered a batch. Whether I used one ticket or I used 20 tickets, that is considered one batch in the validation queue. Now the pages are going to be how many pages are associated with each ticket. So in this example that I have on the screen right here, this was one ticket scanned. If I click this drop down next to the green arrows, it shows me 5 pages. So I know that 5 pages are inside of this one document that was scanned in. From time to time in my training system, I do sometimes time out, so I'm going to have to go back into the batch here. I simply click on the blue hyperlink. So the pages are the individual pages that are inside of that document that's listed right here. In this example, I only have one document listed in this batch. Did that answer the question, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Very good question. So in the middle of the screen, we have 2 tabs. We have a File tab and an Edit tab. Currently, we are on the File tab, and we see that we have a magnifying glass with a plus. If I hover over it, you'll see that I get a pop-up that says Zoom in. So if I click on it, it will zoom in for me. If I click the magnifying glass right next to it, it will zoom out. If I want to zoom in a selected area, I click once, take my mouse and draw a little box, and you'll notice that it zooms in very far. And from here I could scroll around on the scroll bar on the right. If after zooming in you would like to return the document to look in its normal view, I simply click on the best fit icon, and that will return the document to its normal view. If I would like to page from page 1 to page 5, I can either click on the drop down and click page 2, or I have the ability to simply use the green arrows and just go to page 3, go to page 4, and then go to page 5. So I'm going to go back to page 1. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Now, I also have the ability on the Edit tab. If I click on Edit, you'll see a list of icons at the top. The first icon looks like a magic wand. This will execute several cleanup functions at one time. So if I were to click on this, it may perform a multitude of all of these other functions next to it. Be cautious when using the wand. It may make a change that you did not want to happen. The next icon over is my deskew. So if I scan something in and it's crooked, I can deskew it. The next one over, I can remove hole punches. I can remove the black border if for some reason the scan has a black border around it. I can remove large and small speckles. Now this one you want to be very cautious with. For example, if you're scanning in a multitude of audiology reports, those reports have hundreds of dots on them. If I click on Remove Speckle, if I click the Remove Speckle, it may remove those dots, which is something obviously you would not want to happen on an audiology report. The next icon over is my invert text. This document is already black and white, so if I had scanned it in color, I could have changed it to black and white. The next icon will flip horizontal, flip vertical. Again, I can rotate, so I'll demonstrate rotating. So if I had scanned something in and it was upside down, for example, and it looked like this, I could come to my Edit tab and click Rotate, and it would rotate it clockwise. The next tab over is your Rearrange or Delete Pages. From here, I have the ability, let's say, for example, page 5 should be page 2. I can left click and drag it over and drop it. And now page 5 has become page 2. Maybe page 4 is a blank page and I don't need it. Before I upload this into HAIMS, I can click on it one time, hit the delete key on my keyboard, and it will delete that document from the list. When I'm done, I would click Done. Once you make changes or edits to the documents in the middle pane, it is important that you click on Save, which is the first icon you see under Edit. I want to save my changes. If I do not save my changes and I upload this document into HAIMS, all of those changes will not take place. So it's imperative that you save your changes prior to importing. And I get this question a lot at this screen. What if I make a change, I don't like what happened, how do I get it back to its original form? There is no undo button from the screen. You would simply click on the validation queue. Since you did not make any saves, nothing will have changed. And then you can click and go right back into the same batch. And it's just like nothing had happened. So your undo button is to get out of the queue, go out of the batch, and then come back into the same batch. If you do make a save, if you click on the save and you accidentally save a change that you did not want, you cannot undo a save, which means you will have to rescan all those documents again, at least for the document list that you're working on. In this example is line 1. So again, we have the File tab and we have our Edit tab. Over on the right side, here we have the all-important metadata information. Again, 18 different fields that we can fill in. Prior to importing into HAIMS, you must fill out 4 required fields. This is the same whether I'm in standalone, whether I am in Alta embedded, or I'm here doing bulk scanning. You still have to, when you import a document into the HAIMS application, you must fill out at least 4 required fields. You'll notice our first field is grayed out. All of these fields are grayed out. The only way I can make a change is to click on the change icon here in the middle. Once I click change, it will then allow me to make changes. So for example, this patient's name is HAIMS XXX5. If I scroll down to the bottom, I see that over here on the left, I see the name HAIMS XXX5. The author of the document, I see John Holliday's signature here on the bottom. The date of the visit, if I scroll back to the top, I can see that the visit date is accurate. Again, this is an assessment. This is a standard form 506 physical exam, which I see down here at the bottom. It is not a sensitive document. If it were sensitive, I would check mark this box right here that says mark as sensitive. So if you need to label a document as break the glass, this is where you would do it. Again, 18 different fields. I can fill in all 18 if I choose. 4 are required. The more fields that you fill in, the easier it will be to search for this document in the future, which we are going to demonstrate searching for documents in about 20 minutes. I scroll down to the bottom. I see the clinic is dermatology, and I see Eglin Air Force Base is the facility name. If this was an off-site facility, let's say Kaiser, I could type in Kaiser. If I wanted to put in the DoD or non-DoD address, I could do that. If it was overseas and I wanted to pick a different country, I could pick a different country. Once all of my metadata fields have been filled in, again, the metadata information must match all 5 pages inside this document. Once I'm completed all of my changes, I can then put it back on hold, or I could click on import, which will change my status over here on the left. It'll change my status to a green check mark, and when I get, or a white check mark, and when I get that check mark, that means that I can then import it into HAIMS. So again, the process. We create our ticket. We do document preparation. We prepare all of our documents. We walk to the scanner. We scan our documents into the queue. We then come into the queue. When we get to the validation queue, we find our batch. If it is not in the available batch list, you may need to get your system administrator involved and have them search only rejected. It may have accidentally been placed inside only rejected. If it does get placed inside only rejected, the medical records administrator can simply go into the batch, open the batch, change the status to hold, and that will then make it available here on this screen. So once I find my batch, first thing I want to look at is number of pages. Do I have all of my pages? Then I click on the blue hyperlink under Validate Batch, and this will open the batch. I utilize the two tabs in the middle to validate my information, make sure it's accurate, go through each page, make sure I have every page, and then I verify the information on the right in the metadata matches all of the documents or the pages in the middle, all 5. If everything matches, I simply click on the change arrow, I click import, which then puts the green ball with the white check mark under status over here on the left, and then I close my batch. When I click close, this batch, all 5 of these documents, will be uploaded into the patient HAIMS XXX5. And I would be finished. So it's a very simple process if you create a very good ticket, because the ticket information is what transfers over to the right screen over here, the validation screen. If I create a ticket with just one label, let's say the only thing I put on there was document type and it was assessment, the system will require me to fill in the patient's name, the author's name, which is the author of the document. Who creates the document? That's the name. If you do not know the name, or you cannot read the doctor's handwriting, you can type in the word unknown. Down below that, you see date created. It's another required field. So this is the date of the visit. MHS form number. MHS form number is a smart box. So if I change status and I would like to change form numbers, let's say this is an SF558, I can type in standard form space 55, and you'll see I get a pop-up box that lists all these different drop-downs for me to choose from. So if I want to choose the 558, I can simply arrow down, click 558, which then automatically changes my document type to encounter note. Under document title, I would erase the SF506. Once I've made my changes again, if I'm ready to import, I click import or I click hold. If you notice that you are reviewing a batch and one of your pages is missing, well, you could come in as the validator, notice that it's missing a page, and simply click on reject, and it would reject the batch. So if I click on reject, I have to give it a reason. And then under status, I would see the reject. If I do reject this batch, the only place I would find it is in the rejected queue. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it on hold and click on hold. Now, this does happen from time to time. What if I use one ticket and 4 pages are for patient HAIMS XXX5, but the 5th page is for a completely different patient? Can I scan all 5 in with one ticket? Yes, you can. And this is exactly what you would see. You would see one document line under document list because you only used one ticket. Then what you can do is you can split this apart. And how do we split? We come down to the bottom of the screen where you see these two chevrons. When I click on these chevrons, it will bring up thumbnails, and I will see all of my pages listed, whether it's 5 or it's 55. When I want to split, I highlight the one that I would like to split. So I can click on number 5. I can right-click and hit Split Document. It says, are you sure you want to split? A new document will be created. I hit yes. Now what you need to understand is that when you split a document, the metadata information is going to follow the pages that are prior to it. So since I took page 5 and split it, the metadata information for pages 1 through 4, it copied over. So if I click on line 2 over here on the left, you'll notice that if I show you in the middle of the screen, I have one page. I know it's only one because it's grayed out. And over on the right, I have the same metadata information as line 1. So I need to change that. In order to change that, I need to click Change. So I know that this is for a different patient, so I'm going to click the red X and then click inside the patient box. And I'm going to pick HAIMS MMM 1. And here's HAIMS MMM 1. So I click the blue hyperlink, and now I have changed the name. Again, I can hover over just to make sure that I did choose the correct patient. So if this information in the middle matches the information on the right, I would be done. So the provider's name may be John Holliday. The date may be the same, but the form could be different. Again, this could be a procedure note. So I could click on procedure note. And then under document title, I could be more specific. Maybe it's something to do with orthopedics. I could type in orthopedics. Make my changes over on the metadata. Click on my green import. Once I click on the green import, it would change my status. And then I would have two separate document lists over on the left. One for patient HAIMS 5, and the second one is for patient HAIMS 1. So that's how we split. So if we want to split documents apart, we simply click on the chevrons, and I could split again. So if I want to go to line 1, and I wanted to split maybe the last 2 pages, I could click on page 3. I could right-click, hit split, and it would give me 3 lines up here on the left. Then I would need to validate all 3 lines so that the metadata on the right matches all 3. So, what happens if you scan in one document and it's one ticket? So you use one ticket for one patient, and let's say there's 5 pages. And you come into the validation queue and you see 2 lines under document list. Because there could have been an interruption in the transmission. So we noticed that there was an interruption in transmission possibly, and for some reason, when I scanned my one ticket with 5 pages into the queue, it split them apart. And I would like to merge them all back together as one document prior to uploading. You'll notice there are no blue arrows over here. However, when I click back on line 1, you'll see a blue arrow pop up. If I click on the blue arrow, this will allow me to merge with the document below it. It says, would you like to delete this after it's merged? Yes, I will. And it will take line 1 and merge it with line 2. And now if I hit the drop down, you'll notice I have all 5 pages together. From here, of course, you go to the right, you validate, you click on the change icon, you click on the green import. That will change your status on the left. And then you close batch and it is uploaded into the HAIMS system. Once you change your status to import and you hit close batch, that document and all of the documents that are listed as anything that has the green ball with the white check mark They all automatically get uploaded into HAIMS. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, I have one. Let's say that in the left pane there, I had a batch that was 6 different documents, and I've gone through the validation, and 5 of them, everything is good to go, and they're ready for import. And the 6th one, I need to wait for some clarification. I'm not really sure about something. Can I put the 5 into HAIMS and then just save the one? And if so, how would I do that?
Very good question. So the student asked if there were 6 lines over in the document list on the left. So 6 different documents. And the validator goes through and validates 5 of them, clicks import, which gives it the green ball with the white check mark. And on the 6th one, he would like to hold off on importing that because he needs to do a little further research. Yes, he can do that. What he would do is he would validate the other 5. He would click import for five different times. And then on the one that he wants to keep in the batch, he would make sure that it's on hold. So he would come over and click hold status, which then would make sure that the status you see over on the left would have the 2 blue bars. And when we close our batch, and if I hit close batch, the other 5 would be imported into HAIMS, and only that one line would remain. And if I opened back up into the same batch that had 6, this is what I would see. I would see just the one line because the user placed it on hold. I hope that answered your question. That's a great question.
Thank you.
So as far as the bulk scanning medical records portion of HAIMS, that has now been completed. Again, change status on the right, click import, which will change status over on the left, close your batch, and you now have just imported this document into the HAIMS application. I was asked in a class one time, what if I click import, change status to import, and then I close my batch, and then I realize, ooh, I needed to make one more change, or I didn't save my changes. Can I undo that? Unfortunately, you cannot undo. Once you click close batch, if your status says import, it will import all of the documents in the middle and all of the metadata over on the right. So don't forget, if you do utilize your file and edit tabs and you do make changes, save your changes prior to importing into HAIMS. So now we are. Question, yes.
What if you import the wrong batch into the wrong patient?
That's a great question. So the student wants to know, what if you accidentally import a batch into an incorrect patient? Possibly you were splitting. You use one ticket and you split a lot of your different documents apart, but you forgot to change one of the patient's names, and you import it into the incorrect patient's file. Unfortunately, you cannot undo that. In that situation, anytime that a user imports something that's not correct into a patient's record and it's incorrect, you would need to follow your current process at your site. And for HAIMS, that would be to contact either your system administrator or the person that has been given the permissions to undo or fix documents that are incorrectly put into the HAIMS system. So to your question, in that example, I would contact, maybe it's the system administrator, maybe it's the HIPAA auditor, whoever has the assigned role at that facility, and I would let them know I accidentally uploaded something incorrect into the wrong patient, and then that person would go into the patient's record and they would remove it from view. Now it will never, ever, ever be deleted. One thing to know about HAIMS, which is also the same for ALTA, once a record has been imported into the system, you can never delete it. It will never be removed. Now, it can be hidden from view so that clinical users cannot ever see it again, but it is never removed from the system. So if you do make an error, you will want to contact the person at your site that has the ability to fix or remove that from error, and it's a very easy process for them. Great question. So, as I mentioned, that will conclude the bulk scanning portion of scanning one or more documents all at one time with either one ticket or multiple tickets. And now we're going to move into the regular clinical standalone mode. So I'm going to click on the dashboard. And we are going to shift gears here. You have to completely forget what I just talked about. We're going to now talk about being a clinical user, not a bulk scanner, create ticket, validator. This is a completely different process. So we log into the HAIMS standalone, which is a website. From there, our role in the middle. If we are a clinical user, it will say your assigned role is clinical user. I will only see 3 tabs: dashboard, patient search, and logout. That's all I will see. I will, however, be able to see my most recently viewed patients, the last 20. And of course, everyone will see help, my settings, and quick search on the right. So if I want to do a patient search, I simply click once on the patient search tab. From here, I have the ability to do a search. Very similar to Alta, I have the quick search box. You've got your last name, first name, date of birth. You've got the FMPs. You've got your social security numbers. I am going to do a search for HAIMS, MMM, first name FIF, and hit search. It brought up 2. Now, one thing to keep in mind, when you are in the HAIMS standalone, which is what we are in here, standalone, you do not have that little box down at the bottom like you do in Alta that allows you to search your local area. So if the name that you are going to search for is Smith, if the last name is Smith, first name may be George, you are most definitely going to want to utilize these other fields and help narrow your search, because this system in standalone will search the entire world. It does not search just your local area, which means that A, it could time out on you, or B, if it does not time out on you, it will finally give a return message that says, we found more than 499, you need to refine your search. So if you're using a name that's very generic, you definitely want to make sure that you utilize more of these fields down below before you hit search. You'll notice there's a filter box here again. From the filter box, I have the ability to filter down. If I don't want 15, but I wanted 50, I could simply just type in FIFTY and it will narrow my search. It's very quick, very fast. You'll notice over on the left, we have a couple of icons. If I hover over, again, hover to discover. If I hover over, I see that it says configure columns. The next one over is save my grid configuration. So if I click on the first one and I would like to add certain columns, let's say I want to see the person's rank and I want to see the patient category. You'll notice at the bottom, of course, I can always restore to user default settings. But I'm going to add 2 more columns. Click OK. And as I scroll to the far right, you will see that I have added rank and patient category. You'll notice there are some columns on the right that are in white and some columns over here on the left that are in gray. Whether you are in standalone mode or whether you are in the Alta embedded mode, this is the same scenario. Any of the columns in gray are static. They are locked. You cannot add or remove them. Now I do have the ability to widen them. So if I want to use my mouse and widen the name, I can. I can even, if I choose, I can sort and filter by clicking on the drop down here, it allows me to do a sort, ascending, descending, and I can group things together. So for example, if I were searching for a patient and the patient had 4 dependents, I could literally come in here and group ascending, and it would group all of the dependents with the major social security, the sponsor social. It would group them all together. I can also just simply click on the column header and it'll automatically sort and filter. I can do it by numeric or I can do it by alphabetical. If I change my grid configuration and I'd like to save it, of course, I click on the save icon. This will allow me to label it, and I will label it rank. I could set it as my default view, which means every single time I logged in to the standalone mode, this would be my view. Or I can just label this view as rank. And you'll notice that next to the 2 icons, I now have inside my drop-down box, under my save configurations, I have a rank configuration screen, and then I have my generic default my saved. So if I want to go back to the other one, I just simply click on my saved and it will reload back to the original. Over on the left, there are some icons. The first icon says all. This will view all of the assets for this patient. Again, HAIMS will only return the most recent 100 assets for you to view. If you would like to look at an asset, let's say it was asset number 245, you would then need to use your filter and you would narrow your search. The N, when we were under the My Settings tab, and I mentioned I could only return the most recent 10 or the most recent 25. If I were to click on the N, that's what this would do. If I hover over the W, this will give me the assets from today back 1 week. And if I hover over the M, that's for the last month, 30 days. And then over the magnifying glass, this is the search for assets, similar to what it would look like if I were the researcher, if I had the researcher's role. Down at the bottom, notice it says page 1 of 1, 2 items. And then I also have my page forward buttons, these little triangles here. This is the patient search tab. Once you've found the patient you're looking for, you simply click once on the blue hyperlink and it will return what we call the patient results asset grid. This asset grid that you are looking at right here mirrors that of Alta. It looks the exact same way if I'm in Alta or if I'm in the standalone mode. One thing you will not see, unless you were a system administrator, is this create ticket button up here at the top. This would be for bulk scanning. However, if you are a bulk scanner, you will want to hover over bulk scan and click network in order to create tickets. Creating a ticket from this button does not always work properly. So let's talk a little bit about this screen. Up at the top, of course, I see the patient's name. If I were to click here, I could, if I had the patient's photo, I could upload their photo. Again, you've got quick search help in my settings. You've got a save search tab, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. And I've got a tab that says simple search, and I have an advanced search tab. Down below is my grid. If I scroll to the bottom, you will notice in my grid I have 12 items for this patient. They're all on one page, and I also have my page forward and page back. Like many of the other screens from within Alta, you can customize your view. So let's talk a little bit about what we see and how we can change the view. Starting with the green cue ball. We call this the icon legend. If I click here, I get a pop-up. It's our icon legend. Anything that has a green check mark is available, ready for me to look at. Anything that has the red X, this has been deleted or marked as error. So that example that the student asked about 10 minutes ago when we were bulk scanning, what if I accidentally bulk scanned something incorrectly? When you do get a hold of the person at your facility that has the role that can remove that from view, this is what they would see. They would remove it, and then there would be a red X like you see down here on the left. As a clinical user, you will not see these red X's. The only reason you see them right now is because I am logged in as an administrator. But as a clinical user, you will only see the green check marks. Down below that, we have letters A, D, R. A stands for append. So you'll notice over here on the far right, under versions, I have some A's, some D's, and an R. The A represents an appended document. A D is a derived document or an amended document. So if you go in and you amend a document in HAIMS, the letter D would be placed right next to the original, as well as right next to the replacement document, or the one that you amended. The R is a replaced document. If a user uploads a document into HAIMS and they realize, ooh, I uploaded the wrong document to the wrong patient, but they actually have the correct document. Let's say someone working in cardiology is going to upload an EKG, and they have two EKGs sitting on their desk. One's for patient Joe and one's for patient Sally. And that tech accidentally grabs Sally's and uploads it to Joe's. But the tech actually has Joe's, the correct one. You do have the ability to import and replace. When you do that, the original will have the red X, as you see here, and the replacement one will have an R next to it. Down below that, you see file types. You have the audio files. The next one is the DICOM, or the radiographical images. It looks like a little bitty chest X-ray. Down below that, you have regular JPEG images. Most of all of the Microsoft products, you'll see all of those icons as well. Text files, video files. That is the icon legend. Let me scroll down here. You'll notice down here is the replaced document. This is the one that gets the red X, and down at the bottom you can see that this is the one that was replaced. So, the first icon, what does the first icon do? If I hover over the first icon, it says print my grid. It will actually print the grid that you're looking at right now. Just the columns that you see on this screen, just this screen only. If I had multiple screens, it's only going to print this one page. The next icon over says export grid data. This will take all of the data up to that 100 assets, and it will transfer all of those, the title document names, the things that you see here on the asset grid. It'll take all up to 100, and it will convert it to a CSV file, which you can then open it as an Excel spreadsheet. So the researcher, for example, may utilize this icon. They may want to transport or convert, export all of the information to Excel so that they could utilize Excel in order to filter. The third icon is configure columns. Again, this is just like the other configure columns. I can add and remove. So if I don't want to see description or author or facility, but maybe I want to see the form number, I could check mark. I do have the ability to restore to my user default settings. I click on OK. And if I scroll to the far right, you'll notice that now I do have the last icon that, or the last column that says MHS form number. Again, when you're customizing your grid, you do have the ability to grab those columns in the white, and you can drag and drop. So I can drag sensitive to the front and let go. I can sort. I could click on versions and it'll sort alphabetically. And again, we also have the gray columns. The gray columns, you cannot add or remove. However, I can widen or narrow, and yes, I can sort and filter. So once I've changed my grid configuration, the next icon is to save it. You'll notice in the middle it says no save configurations. Once I click on save, I can label this MHS form I could also set it as my default and click OK. And now in the drop down, you will see that I will have the MHS form grid configuration as well as my basic generic grid configuration. Once it loads, you will see that. The next icon over, they look like a couple of pieces of paper on top of each other. This is our grouping. Grouping will allow the user to checkmark specific assets, one or more. And once you checkmark those assets together, you can click on the group icon, which will then group all of those assets together in one spot. So I'll give you an example. We have a patient that was in a motor vehicle accident. So in the span of 6 or 7 months of treatment, there were multiple documents generated for that patient care. There could have been the pre-op forms. You've got your op forms. You got post-op. There could have been some off-site chiropractic visits, and that documentation was faxed in. There could have been some medications given. All of those different assets over the span of 6 or 8 months are going to be imported into the HAIMS application. And my training system may have locked up on me here. I may have to try and log out and log back in. There we go. Bear with me, I'm going to log back in. Since we are now in the standalone mode, and my screen closes, I'm going to see if I can log back in through Alta. There we go. Again, for those of you, you will know your Alta usernames and passwords. I have to use my training system's username and password. Again, as I mentioned, the screen that we were just at, where the system locked up on me, I apologize for that. The screen that I am going to log into in Alta is the exact same screen. So because I logged out of standalone and I now have logged into Alta, what we were talking about is going to look exactly the same. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about this screen. Now that I've logged into Alta, you will notice over on the left in the folders list, I do not see anything that says HAIMS. And you will not see anything that says HAIMS until you select a patient. So as a super user, it's imperative to know, believe me, you will get this question from someone that you train. I do not see HAIMS in Alta. And your first question to them will be, did you pull up a patient? And they're going to say, no, I didn't. And you're going to say, that's why you didn't see it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a patient. I will pick HAIMS MMM50. Now, I did not log in as a system administrator into Alta. So you will not see that red X when we get into the patient asset results grid. Okay, before I continue, any questions? Did I lose anybody on the fact that I went from standalone to Alta? Everybody okay? Okay, great. I'm going to keep going. And if you're curious and you're wondering how much longer this class lasts, I believe we should be finished up within the next 45 minutes. Okay, so, oh, by the way, if as you're watching this video, if you need to pause, down at the bottom left-hand corner of the video, there should be a pause button. Now that we have logged in to Alta and I have a patient pulled up, you do see the icon that says HAIMS. If I would like to launch the HAIMS application and see the asset results grid, I just one-click, left click one time on the HAIMS folder. You'll notice that a brand new tab launches at the top. This screen is the exact same screen we were just at. The only difference, and I'm going to pin my folders list. The only difference, as I mentioned, we had 12 items in the other one, 12 or 13, and now we only have 11 because anything that was deleted, you can no longer see it under availability here because I did not log in as a system administrator. So we were on the grouping icon. If I would like to group 3 or 4 assets together from that motor vehicle accident, maybe one of them is the SF600 example, and one's an EKG, and one is a chest scan. I check mark these 3 boxes, no matter what pages they are on, and I simply click Group. From here, I will label it MVA, and I'm going to leave the generic group created on and click OK. What this will do is it will group all 3 of these assets together, and it will put a plus sign next to each of those assets. Little difficult to demonstrate when everything is on one page. However, imagine that this third one, this Images Media Diagnostic Imaging, was on page 2. If I went to page 2, I would see that plus right next to it. And if I want to see the 3 assets, I simply click once and open it up, drill down, and from here you can see the 3 assets that were grouped together. If I accidentally grouped one of these documents with the other 2 and I realized I shouldn't have done that, that does not go with this motor vehicle accident, I can simply remove it by right-clicking on it and click Remove Asset from Group. And it will ungroup it. Again, nothing is ever deleted. It's just ungrouping it. So now I only have 2. You'll notice one of the pluses even went away. And yes, student asked yesterday, do you have the ability to add more assets to groups that are already existing? And you do. You simply check mark on the group, then check mark on the asset that you want to add, and it will create its own little subgroup for you. Now, it is imperative or important to know that anyone with the clinical role can group assets together. However, anyone with the clinical role can also ungroup. So I have grouped 2 assets together for patient MMM50. If user John logs in to Alta and pulls up MMM50 2 days from now, he will see these 2 assets that are grouped. He does benefit from my grouping because grouping follows the patient. However, he has the ability to ungroup or delete group by simply clicking on the plus and right-click on the delete group. And it will remove or ungroup those assets. Was there a question there? Okay, great. Hope everyone's still tracking along. So that's grouping. The next icon over is importing assets. It's a very important icon because this is how we import assets into the HAIMS system. Again, this is not bulk scanning. This is the clinical portion of importing documents, and we are in the Alta application. In order to import, whether I was in Alta or standalone, it's the same icon. What I would do is I would click once on the import asset icon, and I see this acquire asset dialog box. From here, you have 2 options. If you are fortunate enough to have a scanner locally attached right to your workstation, you may have the ability to scan from that scanner right into HAIMS. And you will know that as soon as you click on Scan and Upload, and then you click Scan. What will happen is the HAIMS scan tool will automatically load. It's the drivers for the scanner and the tool. It will automatically load. If your scanner is not Twain compliant, you may see an error. It says something like Twain SDK. You'll easily know that it's an error. That just lets you know that your scanner is not TWAIN compliant, TWAIN, in order for you to scan directly from the scanner into HAIMS. It doesn't mean you can't scan from the scanner to your computer. That's a different scenario. This scan and upload button right here is to scan directly from a local scanner right into the HAIMS application itself. This is not scanning to your computer. That's a different method. So since I do not have a scanner, I'm going to utilize the browse and upload a file method. So from here, this is where it gets a little tricky. If you work in referral management, for example, I realize that those departments, they do have fax forwarding in many of the facilities that I've been to. In order to do the browse and upload a file, the file itself has to be in an electronic format. So if your scanner, for example, is not TWAIN compliant, but you do have the ability to scan to your computer or a HIPAA compliant folder, you could simply take the documents that you're about to upload for the patient, let's say an EKG, and you would scan it to the HIPAA compliant drive, save it there, and then come here when you're in Alta, click on import, and then you would get this screen that says browse and upload. Or if you utilize the email method, if that's the HIPAA compliant method you use at your facility, and you've emailed yourself the documents. However you get the documents to your workstation is your business process. What I'm trying to explain is that the documents have to be in electronic format and you have to have access to them, whether it's a shared drive or your workstation or a HIPAA drive. Whatever drive it is you're saving your files to, they have to be in the electronic format before you can browse and upload. So since I've already emailed myself and saved documents to my HIPAA drive, I will click on Browse. From here, let's say I wanted to do the EKG. I simply click on the EKG and I click Open. You'll see the path, see HAIMS EKG. Down below it says examples of unsupported file extensions. You cannot upload into HAIMS batch files, drivers, executables, or Visual Basic files. The system will not let you do it. But other than these 4 files, there's almost no file type you cannot import into HAIMS. And there is literally almost no size limitation. So if you work in optometry and you take pictures, 10 meg pictures of retinal scans, HAIMS, not a problem. You can easily upload a 10 meg file into HAIMS. No problem. So once I have found the file I want to load, I click on Upload. This is going to take me to a screen that should look very, very similar. When we were doing the bulk scanning, we had the exact same 18 metadata fields prior to bulk scanning and importing. It's the same as a clinical user. From here, after we click Upload, we are going to have 4 required fields to fill in. Now I know some of you on the call are looking at my screen and you're saying, I only see 3 red asterisks. That's true. The 4th field is the patient's name, and because I'm in Alta, it's already pulled up here on the left. So the 2nd field would be the author of the document, which we talked about these in the bulk scanning. It's the person or the name of the person that creates the document that you're about to upload. Usually it's the provider. However, if there is no name on the document or you cannot read it, you can type in unknown, but it is a required field. The date the document was created. This is the date of the visit, not the import date. It's the date of the visit. Let's say that in our example, the visit for the EKG was February 25th, 2014. Required field. You must fill it out. The 3rd required field, document type. Now, this is where it does get a little tricky. Not every single document type is listed for every form or document that the military uploads into HAIMS. Many of them are here. However, not every single one is here. So as I scroll through, I'll give you the example of the EKG. If you go under E's, there is encounter note consultation, counseling, H&P, and progress note. But nowhere do I see the word electrocardiogram or EKG. However, there is images. There's images media diagnostic imaging, and images media. So as a clinic, you folks need to get together in your meetings and determine what exactly are you going to call the EKGs that are uploaded into HAIMS, and have everyone in your clinic call it the same thing. And of course, if you take the time to read through some of the interim guidance documents that I referenced in our slide presentation, contact your system administrator. Those documents may be on your shared drive. They may be. And you can feel free to read them. They will give you some helpful information as far as naming recognition. Again, even those two documents do not go into great detail on what to call every single file that you're going to upload. So it is important that as a group or a clinic or a facility, that everyone that's importing into HAIMS tries to use standard naming recognition. So I'm going to choose under Images Media Diagnostic Imaging for the EKG. Now under document title, however, this field is not a required field. It's a very important field. If you recall the patient asset results grid, there were 6 gray columns that you cannot add or remove. One of those columns is the document title. It says title. Where that title comes from is this box right here. So if I am importing an EKG, I could type in EKG. That would help be more specific on the document that I am uploading. The example of someone in a motor vehicle accident. Maybe the document that I am uploading is in reference to a broken left index finger. The person broke their finger, and the document that I want to upload is specific to that broken left index finger. I could come to document title, and I could even type in broken left index and finger. No matter what words I type here, it is a free text field, 256 characters. No matter what I type in here, it is searchable in the future, and I'm going to demonstrate searching in about 5 minutes. So be very specific with the document title field. Again, not required, but the more information, just like in bulk scanning, the more information that you fill out, the more of these 18 different fields you fill out, the easier it will be to search for these documents in the future. You have to think about, once everything stops going into Alta as far as cut and paste, and all of those documents now go into HAIMS, a year or two from now, a patient could have 300 or 400 assets in there. If, when they were imported, if the person that imported them was not very specific, how will you find it in the future? That's the question you want to ask yourself. So right here, document title field. Again, practice setting. It's a smart box. If I type in OUT, you'll notice that it pops up with different outpatient. I can choose whichever one I want. Specialty. I could do cardiology. Type in CAR. Scroll down and click cardiology. DOD organization. I could pick my clinic. Maybe it's dermatology. Installation. I could type in DIAS, Air Force Base, 7th Medical Group. And as I scroll down, non-DOD, Kaiser. Again, 18 different fields, 4 are required. The first one is the name. The second, a patient name. The second is the author name, author of the document. If you do see the provider's name, type it in under the format of last name, comma space, first name. Again, date that the document was created, date of the visit. Marking a document as sensitive. I check mark the box right here, just like when we did the bulk scanning. If it's a sensitive document that I want to upload into HAIMS, this is where I mark it as sensitive. Document title field. Be specific here. Again, fill out as many of the fields as your facility deems necessary. At the very bottom, I have 3 options. If I cancel, it will cancel like nothing happened. If I hit save and close, this will import the documents or document into that patient's file. If I hit save and new, it will also import into the patient's file, but it'll take me back to the browse screen and let me go get another document. So if I'm working with a patient and I have an advanced directive and I want to scan that in, and I also have an SF8 or SF558 emergency room form for the same patient, first step I will do is I will either scan them to my HIPAA compliant drive, or I will email them, or however you get them to your HIPAA compliant drive, and save them. I would hit browse, upload, go get the first file, fill in all of the required information, and hit save and new, which would then take me back to browse and allow me to go get the second document. I get this question every time I say this, so I'm just going to say it now. No, the information does not transfer over in the metadata fields if you do save and new. You do have to start over and fill out all of those fields again. So before I cancel out of here, any questions on the metadata screen? All right, great. We're moving right along. Okay, so now that we've loaded documents into the HAIMS application, how do we search for them? For example, we just loaded an EKG. If this patient had multiple pages of assets, how could I narrow my search? Well, of course, I can click on the arrow right here and click sort, which would work. However, it might be sorted on page 7. What if I want to bring all of the EKGs and just EKGs? Very simple. I can go into this filter box right here, and I can type in EKG, and I don't even have to hit enter. The system will automatically start filtering. And you can see how fast that was. If I backspace out, it'll reload my grid. You notice I have a chest CT scan. I could start typing in chest, and anything with the letters CHEST would filter. This filter will even filter those boxes that are hidden from view. It's very, very fast. You also have the search contains box. So from here, I could search for example, encounter notes. So I could type in ENC. Now, when I use this field, I do have to hit search. I can hit the date type for search, meaning I could use the date that it was created and put in the date range, or I could leave it blank. I could even search by the import date of the document if I knew when it was imported. And this blue box with the white eye inside, this is just asset search suggestions. There are even wildcard searches that you can perform from within HAIMS. So I typed in ENC, which means that it will search not only for the word encounter, but any word that has the letters ENC. But I have to hit search. So now that I hit search, it will reload the grid for me, and it narrowed it down to 3. From here, I could then use filter and type in HI for history and physical, and it would narrow it down even more. So you can either use filter by itself, search contains by itself, or both in conjunction with each other. In order to reload your grid, you need to backspace out of filter, and you need to backspace out of encounter, and then hit search. That will reload your grid. So let's say, for example, I work in pediatrics, and maybe there's a wellness form that gets uploaded from my clinic all the time. And all I ever want to search for is wellness forms. I could literally come in search contains, type in wellness, hit search, And then I could save my search up here on the far right, and I would have my own specific search. You notice one is already saved and it's called Encounter. Watch what happens when I click on one of these searches that's already been predetermined. Someone has already saved Encounter. If I click it, it's just like hitting Encounter and hitting search. It automatically searches for me. And you can save as many searches as you want. If you choose to delete a search, you have to log into the HAIMS standalone and go to My Settings. So I'm going to backspace out of this and hit search so it'll reload my grid. If you recall from the slide presentation, I mentioned that with HAIMS, you now have the ability to see the images from the VA, from their VISTA system. There's only one place that you can actually search for those documents. It's on the tab that says Advanced Search tab right here. Whether I'm in standalone or Alta embedded, I click on Advanced Search and it brings up this screen. Now yes, I could do an advanced search by typing in a specific document title like EKG, but I also could have done that from the filter on the first screen, on the asset screen. If I come to this tab, to me it's more important that I come to this tab to search for just the VA information. And I have to check mark this box that says Include VA. Now you can give it a date range. You do not have to, but you can. Once you've check marked that box, you simply scroll down and you click on Search. And this will search their system to see if there are any documents or records that can be displayed. They would be displayed down at the bottom of the screen in the asset grid. So again, in order to search for VA, you need to come to the Advanced Search tab, check mark this box. You can or cannot use date range by simply clicking on the calendar and then hit search. When you're done, uncheck the box and go back to your Simple Search tab. So as I scroll over to the right on my screen, you'll notice I have a column labeled Sensitive. I'm going to drag this to the front and drop it. Because it's in the white columns, I can do that. Again, the gray columns you cannot add or delete, and you cannot move them. So now that I see that I have a sensitive document right here, I'm going to open this sensitive document up by simply clicking one time on the blue hyperlink. So I left click, and I get this pop-up box. This box says, do you want to view sensitive data? You will be audited if you proceed. And I must give it a reason. If I, as the user, really want to see or view this information, I must give it a reason. So I could click on Investigation, for example, or I could click Other, type in my reason. So I type in my reason and I hit OK. From here, it will allow me to open the asset. And this is an example of a Word document. In our training system, this is really a snapshot picture. So this is a Word document here. Full size. Again, with HAIMS, everything that's uploaded is full size, very easy to view. So I'm going to close out of this. Realize that because I now have opened up a sensitive document, if the HIPAA auditor chooses to run a report on this patient or me, my username, it will tell them that I opened up that break the glass sensitive document. Down below, you'll see that we have a chest x-ray. Was there a question? No, no question. In order to look at the chest x-ray, again, I simply click on the hyperlink and I click on Open. Since this is a zipped file, I double click. And this will open what we call the HMIV, HAIMS Medical Image Viewer. And I will briefly go over the viewer. It's a very similar basic viewer that's used by many of the civilian facilities. Up at the top, we have our Rubik's Cube icon, which we can click on to log out. Down below, we have the Home tab, which would give me the study list. You can only open one study at a time. You'll see on the series I have report and reload. I believe the report icon is going to go away. So I could reload my series. I could reload the slice. If I hover over any of these icons, I get a pop-up that tells me how to perform this function. Panning, I can pan with the left mouse. I can even magnify, change contrast, and we'll go over a couple of these in a minute. At the very bottom, I have my series. I may see more than one series. In my example, I only have one series listed, but there could be 15 series down here with multiple slices or images in each series. If you want to open up to 4 series at a time, you would simply click once, left click once, 4 times on the first series, the second series, the third, and then the fourth. Or maybe you only want to open up 2 series at a time. You just highlight them and then right click and you would hit view all, and it would open up the multiple series up to 4 on one screen. So in our example here, I've opened up one series with 2 different radiographs. Again, if I wanted to magnify, I could left click, hold down my mouse, and I can magnify over the image. I can zoom, I can even invert. If I want the X-ray to look more like an MRI, I can invert the image. I could rotate it, flip it, and down here you've got the DICOM header and the header log. If I go to my View tab, from here I have the ability to, if I've pulled up 2 different series, I could look at 2 different views. If I had 3, I could click on triple. If I had 4, I'd click on the quad, and I'd see all 4 of them on my screen at one time. Since I only have one, I'm going to stay with the one. You'll notice that there are patient demographics information. So if I am looking at a DICOM image or an X-ray, and maybe I want to show it to another patient, or I'm using it for a teaching purpose with the resident, I could hide the patient's information by simply clicking on Show Hide. And now no one can see which patient it is I'm working with. Maybe the color yellow gives you headaches if you have a migraine. Maybe you want to change the yellow because it can be difficult in dark rooms and you want to change it to red. You can simply change the color. Under the Cine tab allows me to play the slices somewhat like a movie. So it looks like DVD controls here. If I go to the select a slice, of course, I can go right to any slice I want. So if I want to go right to slice 2, I just click on 2. I can also play from 1 to 2 by clicking on play, and you saw how fast that went. I'll slow it down by clicking on the play speed. So there, I slowed it down. And I can loop it. If I click on loop, it will play 1 through 2, 1 through 2, 1 through 2. Or I could go 1 through 2 and back, 2 through 1, if I hit shuffle. So I'm going to pause that. That is the Cine tab. Again, select the slice. If the radiologist report that I'm reading says slice 57 has a fracture, and I want to see that specific X-ray, I could go right to it. The last tab is the Annotate tab. From here, the user has the ability to make measurements. So I could draw a measurement. I know it's a little small to see. I right-click on the ruler for ruler properties. One thing that you'll have to do in the HAIMS system, it defaults to Smart English. You would need to change it to Smart Metric. And I'm going to increase the font size just so for demonstration purposes you folks can see it. There we go, 19.4 centimeters. And if I would like to keep dragging and drawing it around, I can. I can do more than one if I choose. I can even draw rectangles or ellipse. I can put a text box on an image and point to it. Curvatures and freeforms. Again, I can stop drawing. I have the ability from within our HMIB to take annotated images and I could save it to my computer with the changes on it. It would save as a JPEG file. I could bring it back into HAIMS as a brand new image or JPEG with all of my annotations. And I could even amend it or have it derived back to HAIMS. If I did, I click on Derive. It will load my image with all of my annotations on it. Over on the right, of course, you see the familiar metadata screen. Since it's amended, of course, I cannot change the date, just like Alta. Fill in my metadata fields, come down to the bottom, and hit Save and Close. And that would import this image with my changes back into HAIMS as a JPEG image. And no, you cannot make any actual edits or changes on any of these X-rays. Whether I clear this slice or not, if I close out and come back, this will be a blank screen. So I can clear my slice here. Before I log out of the HMIV or the HAIMS Medical Image Viewer, any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to exit out by clicking on the Rubik's Cube and hit Exit. So you've had a chance from this screen to see how it is to open a document, to look at a sensitive document, that there are amended documents and you can amend or append by simply opening the document, saving it to your HIPAA drive, making your changes, and then you re-import it back in. To re-import it back in, if I wanted to make a change, for example, to this encounter note, I would open it, I would save it to my HIPAA compliant drive, make my changes, and then come back, right-click, and you'll see where it says Import Derived or Append or Replace. This is how I bring it back in. Just make sure you choose the correct asset when you're bringing it back in. How do I know, for example, on these two amended documents here, which is the original? I can right-click and hit View History. That tells me that this is the original and it was imported 30 October. If I right-click on the second one and hit View History, that tells me that the original was imported 30 October and the new one was amended and imported in on 3 November. So if you want to know which of the two letters is the original, you just simply right-click and hit View History. One more really cool thing that HAIMS can do, especially from within Alta. As a matter of fact, you can only do this from within Alta. Let me open up my folders list one more time. I'm going to close my HAIMS tab. Okay. Now that we have seen how to bulk scan and import assets or documents into the patient's file, and now that you've seen from the HAIMS Alta Embedded how to click on the import icon and import documents into the patient's file, once these assets are in the patient's record, when you are in Alta, and this can only be done in Alta, not standalone, you have the ability to take that asset and associate it to a specific encounter. I can associate it to a current encounter. I could also associate it to a previous encounter. I could even associate it to a problem. So there are 4 different methods for a user to actually launch the HAIMS application when you're inside of Alta. The first method is the HAIMS icon. You just simply click on HAIMS. That will launch the main asset grid where you can see all of the assets associated to that patient. The second method is through the current encounter. So I'm going to click on the current encounter and I will open my encounter. Now down at the bottom, you'll notice that there is a folder that says Artifacts and Images. If I click on Artifacts and Images, that will open up a new tab. This tab is the HAIMS Artifacts and Images tab under the current encounter. In the middle of the screen, you'll notice it says, no assets matching your search were found. That is because no one has associated or paper clipped any of the assets to this encounter. So if I want to associate the EKG to this encounter, possibly I'm working with a cardiologist. Cardiologist is with the patient. They're seeing the patient today, right now, in the current encounter, and they run an EKG, and then the cardiologist has the tech to load the EKG into HAIMS. So the administrative person puts the EKG into the HAIMS application. Well, then the provider has the ability to come to the current encounter, open HAIMS by clicking on Artifacts and Images, and then they can click on the Associate Existing button. From here, this redirects the user back to the HAIMS asset grid. From here, you have 11 assets that you can choose from. So I'm going to choose this EKG and this EKG right here. Click OK. Yes, I want to create the association, so hit OK. Now you will notice that in this current encounter, we have 2 assets that have been associated or paper clipped to this encounter. But as I look at it, I go to the title and I make this a little bit wider so I can read it, and I see, oh wait, I did not want that appended one. Not a problem. I simply check mark the box, which will highlight delete association. I give it a reason, incorrect encounter, and it will remove or unpaper clip that asset from this current encounter. Very, very easy to do. If the asset is already inside of HAIMS, you simply click Associate, and you can associate one or more at a time to the encounter. So the second or the third method of opening up HAIMS is under the previous encounter. So on that current encounter that was just open, and we associated the EKG to that, once the provider signs the encounter and it becomes closed, it turns into a previous encounter. So if I want to open the previous encounter, I simply click once on the previous encounter. In my example, I only have one encounter, and you'll notice that there is a blue paperclip right next to it. That blue paperclip tells the user that one or more HAIMS assets, documents, have been associated to this encounter. So if I'm the provider working with this previous encounter, I do not need to sort and filter to find the assets associated to that encounter because someone has already paperclipped them to the encounter for me, which is great. Makes it very easy for the provider to find it. If you want to see the assets, you can click once on the blue paperclip. You can highlight the encounter, which opens up the artifacts and images at the top here. Or you can even right-click and hit Manage Artifacts and Images. So I will click on Artifacts and Images, which opens up the tab. This tells me, as I can see, 4 different assets are associated to that previous encounter, which is very nice for the provider. They do not have to search the HAIMS asset grid to find these assets because they've already been paperclipped to the previous encounter. If, for example, I was working with a previous encounter and I had a document in my hand that I wanted to scan right into the previous encounter, you can. You simply click on the Import Asset icon. From here, you can browse and upload the file, and you'll notice it says Associate with Selected Encounter. What that means is if I scan that to my HIPAA drive and then I clicked on Acquire Asset or Import Asset and I go browse and find my file, as soon as I choose it, click Open, click Upload, I will fill in my metadata information. As soon as I'm done with the metadata information, it will be paperclipped directly to that previous encounter. So I would see 5 of them in here. So you can either associate them by clicking on Associate, the button, or you can import them in yourself by clicking on the Import Asset button. So I'm going to close that previous encounter. And there is one other method to launch the HAIMS application. I'm going to click on the Problems folder. I will drill down under the Problems list. And you'll notice next to the neurologic disorder, you see a blue paperclip. That tells me that one or more assets has been associated to this problem. If I click once on the blue paperclip, this will launch the Artifacts and Images tab, and I can see that an EKG has been paperclipped or associated to that neurologic disorder. So those are the 4 methods to launch the HAIMS application from within Alta. Don't forget that you cannot see the HAIMS folder in Alta unless you have pulled up a HAIMS patient. And once you are inside Alta, if you want to launch the HAIMS application, you either click on the HAIMS tab folder, you go to Current Encounter and click on Artifacts and Images, you go to the Previous Encounter and then click on the Artifacts and Images at the top of the screen, or you can access the HAIMS application from within the problems list. So unless there are any other